It is time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. He is one half of the hosts of the Inside the Birds podcast. Mr. Geoff Mosher is here as we take a look at the Eagles getting ready for the Denver Broncos this weekend. Moshe, what's going on, man?
How you doing, Mike? What's going on?
I'm all good, man. We've got Broncos this weekend, kind of that flux situation where you're, figuring out what happened the week before and then moving forward to your next opponent. Obviously, a lot of conversation. Jon Gannon, the defensive coordinator, spoke yesterday. We talked a little bit about it on Monday in how this is going. He had some curious answers to some questions yesterday. And obviously, when you're trying to move on, the way that Gannon, when he speaks on Tuesdays, we get a chance to kind of look back at things. Was there anything that stood out to you with the way he kind of answered some of the questions yesterday during his media availability?
Yeah, I appreciate both Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon actually answering questions the most they can, and sometimes you're surprised by what they say. For example, I think just Nick Sirianni talking about how Jalen Hurts will go off script to a certain percentage that they don't want, and they try to bring it back to a certain percentage, is something that a lot of head coaches wouldn't admit to and talk about, because you're kind of saying you want to see somebody improve, and you're pointing out what, and you're using a name attached to it. And with Jonathan Gannon yesterday, He was talking about his defense and adding too much responsibility. In his mind, he feels like there are things that he can't do that maybe he's seen or done other places, because he's already just trying to get this new collection of talent that he's got to do some of the basic things correctly. And if you listen to what he said, he even went back and talked about in Minnesota, a player saying, hey, this deception and disguise stuff is great, but how am I supposed to make a play when I'm running from the line of scrimmage all the way back 20 yards to a deep post area, just trying to get to the spot in time? How am I supposed to make a play, and do things like that? And what he's trying to, in my opinion, what he's trying to say about this defense is that he's got a lot of guys who haven't played that style of defense before, and he is trying to make adjustments. I'm sure you've seen some clips out there. If you didn't see it during the game, he not only did do some blitzing, he did try to do some disguise and deception, and he has changed up his scheme. He's not solely cover 2 anymore. And what he's trying to do isn't working. So there's a difference between saying a guy is doing a terrible job because it doesn't make sense. And I was among those people saying that in week 3, week 4, week 5, when you're playing all this cover 2 defense and you can't stop the run because you got no safety in the box and you don't have a good linebacker. But at this point, he's trying so many different things and it's still not working, which means he's not doing a good job, but he's trying. He's trying to find the right blend, and that's the word he used, between putting these guys in a position to succeed and also trying to make his defense better. And it's obviously been very difficult for him to do that.
Yeah, I know a lot of, we talked a little bit on Monday, is it the scheme or is it the personnel that he has? And, it's easy to kind of say, hey, obviously they don't have a great personnel in this defense. I think we can all kind of agree with that. Like they really don't have an all-pro level player anywhere close to one. They don't really maybe even have a bona fide Pro Bowl player. But where would the strength of his defense kind of lie, I guess, would be one question that, I would say, look, I think his corners are probably his best, most capable players, no?
Obviously the strength of the team is the defensive line. But if we're talking about like the back 7 and the past defensive issues and coverage, right? Yes, the corners are the strength. Now, when we say that, he don't have Steph Gilmore. I mean, Darius Slay is a nice player. Okay, he's a good player. He's done well this year. And he has used Darius Slay at times to travel on number 1 receivers when it's been warranted. And he's also put him, as we saw in the Kansas City game, on the Travis Kelce, and he did a good job on that. It was covering Tyreek Hill, specifically when he had Eric Wilson on Tyreek Hill, because that was where they aligned Tyreek Hill, that it became an issue for him. So I would say the corners have not let down, but the wide receivers aren't the people that are beating the Eagles constantly. It's the tight end. It's Donald Parham Jr. and Jared Cook and Stevenson. It's O.J. Howard. filling in for Rob Gronkowski, who hurt them. It's the running backs catching passes, whether it's Josh Jacobs or Kenyon Drake or Chuba Hubbard, who had over 100 yards. They're getting beat by the interior of their defense mostly, and that's the linebacker and safety level. And that's, to me, the biggest part of that being a personnel issue. Teams that do what Jonathan Gannon, I think, really wants to do, you pick a team like the Vikings or the Patriots. They're so well known for their disguise, their coverage, and their adaptability, their multiple fronts, right? Well, those guys have Anthony Barr, and they've got Eric Kendricks, and they've got Harrison Smith, they've got Dante Hightower. Steph Gilmore was a Patriot. The McCourty brothers are really smart. Guys who have come to that team, have that skill set, came into a culture that does it. This is a 4-3 team that didn't really play well last year as a 4-3 team, and he's trying to do different things. And you can't expect TJ Edwards to line up at the line of scrimmage, kind of go back and forth, rock like he's going to blitz, and then run 20 yards back and go cover the tight end in a zone. The TJ Edwards shouldn't even be playing as much as he's playing. He is, just because he's the best that they've got. And the same thing with Harris and McLeod. I mean, these are nobody on this defense is individually terrible, but for what he wants to do, they're not the right fit.
No, I agree. But I guess the one question is you had tweeted at me earlier about they give up the fourth least amount of yards in coverage, and one of those things is because they're playing their wide receivers, right? They're playing their corners. So, off the ball, they're letting you catch the ball in front, and then, so you're getting nickel and dime down the field. The one thing that they wanted to kind of eliminate is he doesn't want to get beat on the big play. And that's where I say, well, then, hey, this isn't working. I get it. Your personnel's not great, but it's also not working. So at what point do you say to your corners, all right, I'm going to see if these teams are going to try to beat me, so I'm going to ask you guys to do more. You are more talented. I feel like he's putting too much on the plate of his less talented players, is my point, is, hey, Slay and Nelson, you're not great, but you're better than Edwards and Taylor, so I want more onus on you, less on them.
There might be an argument to be made for that.
That's what I'm trying to get. I think Domowitch and Bowen got it, and I said, look, he said they're declining. I can't complain with that. I think the defensive line is lesser than it's been. You got a lot of the same players, just older. I think the linebackers are comparable. They haven't had good linebackers in 5 years. I mean, so the linebackers are comparable.
Right.
Their safeties are really blah. I mean, since Jenkins has left, they've been blah. So Schwartz had blah safeties. These guys are blah too. I don't think they kill you. I don't think they help you. They're not playmaking safeties. Let's say that. But his corners are better than anything Schwartz had.
Right, but again, and they're not getting hurt by wide receivers. They're not getting beaten.
Right, but I'm saying they're not getting hurt by wide receivers, but they're also not playing them to get hurt by wide receivers. In other words, hey, I know
I would have agreed with you on that 4 weeks ago, but he's playing a lot more cover one now, which is bringing a safety into the box, which means those two corners, one of them is going to be on an island, right? Because you only got one safety deep to help out in one area, and they're fine. That play that Mike Williams made was the only big play in the game.
True.
And, he was actually interfered with, I thought, by Slay, and he still made the catch. Look, Mike, you're watching the football, right? And we talk about this in other teams, like how whether it's Brett Brown or maybe Joe Girardi, they get all, or even Gabe Kapler, they get all of the blame when it's clearly not all of their fault, right?
Yes.
And that's all I'm saying with Jon Gannon is that he's trying. I credit him for at least doing different things. Now he's not playing. He's not protecting the corners. He's playing more cover one. He blitzed more. When you blitz, you don't protect your corners, right? He blitzed 30% last game, was the highest amount of blitzing. He's not doing a good job because the results aren't there. But if you judge everything on results and not the talent and not the context, I think that's where we get into the issue. Of course, I'm sure he's going to try to do something different continuously. We're also only halfway through the season. Maybe, and he's not facing Tom Brady anymore. He's not facing Patrick Mahomes anymore. Justin Herbert's looking pretty good. Unfortunately, he's facing the most accurate quarterback in league history over the last 4 or 5 years in Teddy Bridgewater. Oh, yeah. And amazingly enough, the fourth most accurate quarterback in the sports history.
Yeah, and full dynamic. I said, look, the dynamic of how poorly they have done against the upper tier quarterbacks. The
Right.
games they've won, they've only given up 10 points a game. So
Yeah.
there's this yin and the yang of like how his defenses have kind of performed against the quality of quarterback. That being said, to give up 80% of completions 5 different times and 75% overall, I mean, this is historically bad.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. And so that goes to the fact that whatever he's trying to do, when he is trying to do something different, that's not working either. And so he has to continue. If he does not continue to try different things, and at some point he's probably going to run out of trying new, but I mean, that's his job. All right. I ran 30% blitzes. Now I have to go back and look what happened in those blitzes. Okay. What went wrong? Because next time I call blitzes, it's not going to be the same blitz. We're going to try to do something differently. There was one blitz where Rodney McLeod came from like 15 yards deep to try to get at the quarterback. Rodney McLeod's not throwing James. He's not going to get to the quarterback when he's playing that deep and running in late. So now you got to figure what I really think he needs to do better, Mike, is the defensive line is the strength, and he's got to stunt, he's got to twist, he's got to get those guys moving, doing more athletic things to get at the quarterback. And we'll see if that's the next step.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, much like Jim Schwartz's defense, a lot was predicated on getting pressure from the front. Schwartz didn't like the blitz. It's obvious that Gannon doesn't like to have to blitz either if he doesn't have to. And, it'll be interesting because, as you mentioned, Bridgewater's a very accurate passer. He's not a guy with a big arm that likes to take a lot of shots down the field. Is this a week where you say, hey, I want to see if you can push the ball down the field on us?
Yeah, I mean, you would like to think that that's the style of defense that they play, where they challenge him. But again, we always talk about, the offense has got a plan too. The offense, I think there's 2 things to watch. The Eagles have been much better stopping the run the last 2 weeks, but they've also not had really good running games that they've had to stop. The Lions were very one-dimensional, and obviously the Chargers decided that they were going to pass and then try to set up a little bit of run, but they didn't run very well either. But this is a different running team they're going to face now. I mean, Javonte Williams has had a really nice year. Melvin Gordon, they're both averaging over 4.5 yards per carry, and the offensive line is good. One of the advantages the Eagles had the last 2 weeks, not only was TJ Edwards being a better linebacker, but the Lions offensive line stunk, and the right side of the Chargers offensive line was not very good either. This offensive line's good, this running game's good, and the quarterback's pretty good, accurate. So they're going to try, I suspect they are going to try to challenge the Eagles again in the run and set up some of that short play action stuff that's really killed the interior of the Eagles defense.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4 here, Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. And obviously, they've got a lot of things happening this week on that defensive side of the ball. See how they mix it up. Also now on the offense, they did promote earlier today Jordan Howard to the active roster. He is now, it's going to be interesting because Sanders at some point is going to be due back. He's slated to be able to return next week. You would then potentially have 4 guys who were all saying, hey, I deserve a role in this offense. When Sanders was here, they didn't seem all that willing to use him to run the football. So how does that muddy the waters when they have 4 guys now?
Well, I would imagine that really Boston Scott kind of becomes the odd man out guy again. He was on the 53, but he was collecting dust for the first 6 or 7 weeks of the season. And I think when Sanders comes back, you'll probably see that kind of reaction again, where Boston will be the odd man out, and they will try to mix and match between Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard, and getting Kenneth Gamewell on there a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, adding this week, obviously, Jordan Howard, I think had 17 carries last week. I think that kind of led the way for them. Scott kind of had 10, so he's Gainwell. Do you feel like they've kind of been phasing him out a little bit?
No. Actually, we talked about this on the podcast that dropped this morning. Sometimes I think that there's an inherent greediness in being a sports fan, where when you see something good, instead of recognizing why it's working well, you just want more. With Kenneth Gamewell, I think that's the issue. I think the usage of Kenneth Gamewell is perfect for a guy who was A, a 5th-round pick, B, a rookie, C, weighs about 200 pounds on a good day, and D, did not play college football last year. And if you want to throw an E in there, when he did play for Memphis 2 years ago, he was not a high-volume runner. He was a runner and a pass catcher. So it seems obvious to me that their plan was, we like this guy. We want to get him on the field as a 3rd running back and in a 3rd running back role. And just because there was an injury to Miles, because they had Jordan Howard, to me it was smarter to do what they're doing and continue to use Gainwell as a third running back who can catch some passes, who can get you occasional run and play in the 2-minute drill, and not overuse him, not ask him to do too much. There are still a lot of parts of his game that need to be refined, whether it's pass protection, whether it's running between the tackles, between the 20s, the vision. So I like how they're using Gainwell. And I think that if you start using him more and trying to get more out of him, and he fumbles or he does something, everybody says, man, what's going on with this guy? He's no good. He's not what I thought. No, the plan for him has been pretty solid from the start. He's a rookie. He's a 5th rounder. I have no issue with them keeping his role the way it is.
Yeah, 2 carries last week, and he did get that goal line carry, so he ends up getting the touchdown there. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. And I guess the other interesting part, Moshe, is are they committed to this style of offense? I mean, they've carried the ball, 46, 39 times in 2 weeks? I mean, is Nick Sirianni committed to being this type of guy?
Great question. My sense is that he's committed to doing this if this is what it's going to take to win ball games. But my sense is also that for the first time in 3 weeks, he's going to realize how difficult it is to line up and run the ball 35 to 40 times. This Broncos defense is good. It's been hurt at the middle linebacker level, and obviously they traded away Von Miller, but you saw what they did against Dallas last year. There's only been 2 teams this year that have really run the ball well against them. That was the Browns in that Thursday night game with Dearness Johnson, and I can't remember the second team offhand that ran the ball well. I was looking at it, but for the most part, I think they have the 6th best rushing defense. And plus, you're going into Denver. The Eagles have not won in Denver since the 80s. It's very difficult. The climate thing is real. The mile high thing is real, especially for teams that don't play there a whole lot. There's only been 13 games between these 2 teams in the history of both organizations. So getting tired is going to be something they're going to have to worry about. Although running is, that's probably easier than dropping back and throwing 50 times. But my point is that I don't think they are going to be able to just line it up and run the ball 45 times against this Broncos defense. I think the Broncos will make them have to open it up more.
And most, look, as much as everybody out there says they got to run more, running the ball 35, 40 times, that's not sustainable for victory. I mean, you can't be a team that just essentially leans on the run, first and foremost. You have to, at some point, have some trust in your pass game. So I know everybody wants to run it, but you have to be real here and say you can't run 40 times a week.
Right. I get a kick out of people saying, the Eagles have done a so much better job of balancing their offense since the first 6 weeks. I'm like, no, it's not. It's still an imbalanced offense, just to the other extreme. They're just running a lot now and passing very little.
Well, and the fact that they're running, the running is keeping them in, in a game against a more talented team is what happens. I mean, Detroit, not the situation. You just ran all over them, and at some point, you just buried them because they were demoralized. I thought you were at that point last week where the Chargers looked winded, they looked gassed, and they looked demoralized at some point. The problem was your defense couldn't step up and help out, but the offense looked like they had the Chargers in a position to break them.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about what the Eagles do in the run game is it's not very sophisticated, right? They're not doing a whole lot of motion, not doing a lot of misdirection, not doing a lot of pulling, not doing a lot of trapping. They're basically putting their 5 offensive linemen out there and either 2 or 3 tight ends, creating a big front and running it up the middle. And you're right, that's pretty demoralizing because you know it's coming and you still can't stop it. But to your question about sustainability, there are teams out there that are better against the run. Denver is one of them. If you're just going to line it up and try to run the ball down their throats the same way, I have a feeling you're not going to be as successful as you've been the last 2 weeks.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast says, obviously, the Eagles getting ready for Denver. There's a lot happening here. And then, I think one thing that ties to this run game is this offensive line is starting to gel and blend a lot better. I mean, you're finally getting a group of guys that have got a chance to play next to each other, which is almost something that hasn't happened in a year and a half.
Yeah, I know. It almost makes you wonder what's coming around the corner, right? It's pretty scary. But no, it is a good thing. And, at some point, perhaps Brandon Brooks will rejoin the roster here, although it's kind of strange. Landon Dickerson's playing well at left guard with Sam Allo out, and Jack Driscoll's playing fine at right guard. But, I mean, Brandon Brooks is who he is. So I guess when he comes back in, you put him in and you keep the ball rolling there.
A couple, I know over at the Inside the Birds podcast, you guys do the tape review and you get some insight. And one of the guys, obviously, is Jalen Hurts. So let's take a look at what you guys are seeing and hearing about Hurts and where he kind of is. Because, I asked a question yesterday. You have these 3 draft picks. Are you better off using the 3 picks to beef up that defense that we discussed that just is devoid of talent? Or are you involved in using those picks to add a veteran, proven quarterback? Your Russell Wilsons, whose name you're hearing, get back into the Deshaun Watson conversation. Who knows? Maybe Aaron Rodgers says, hey, I want out too. A quarterback of that magnitude. Are you so sold on this quarterback? Are you still kind of evaluating? You got these 3 picks. It's going to be a huge storyline.
It's going to be a huge storyline, and one of my favorite. I'm already looking forward because I've already started doing some research to our conversations toward the end of the year and the offseason about those 3 picks because
we wait so long for football season to get here, and then we want to advance the conversation to the offseason.
I know. We just look forward to the great storylines. I've started to do some research on teams that have had 2 or more first-round picks in a given draft and how those teams have fared with those picks. And it's interesting to say the least. So we'll get to that when we do. But I don't know what's better for them. Obviously, the Eagles don't always think in accordingly with how media and fans think. I mean, they're obsessed with offensive players, and they're obsessed with quarterbacks, quarterback factory, and we know how much they love Russell Wilson. So I imagine that will be a big target for them this offseason. Unless Jalen Hurts goes out there in the next 8 games and goes 6-2 or something like that, but
which is possible with this schedule.
Yeah, it's also possible they go 2-6.
Right,
so
but at the end of the day, if they do go 6-2 with this schedule the rest of the way, and he's playing the way he is now, did you learn anything? I don't know.
It's a great question. So we've got a lot of football left to watch.
If he's 11 for 17 in these games and he misses 2 big throws, I mean, in the end, what sticks out to me is he missed the throw to Goddard, he missed the throw to Smith. Yeah, he ran, he made a couple plays, he's gritty, he's a leader, all that stuff. But in the end, those 2 throws to me stand out.
And they should. That's kind of his season in a nutshell so far. You see you see a lot of flash, and you see a lot of things that you'd like to see better. And I've talked about this since the beginning of the year, how 1 year doesn't even seem fair for most people to be able to judge them, because you just don't know what kind of improvements you're going to be able to make over time. Nobody ever could probably see Ryan Tannehill being as good as he's become. And not that Ryan Tannehill is great, but he's on a good enough team that has a good enough running game and defense that he can win playoff games and he can win you a division. Can that be Jalen Hurts? I imagine it could be, but not for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe that they have the patience to want to wait that long or the ability to surround him with that kind of team where they are okay with the quarterback not being the best part of the team.
Well, and I guess that you have to also wonder, Moshe, are they okay with their offensive talent right now? Or do they want to continue? The offensive line, you mentioned Herbig, Driscoll, Dickerson, Mailata. They seem to have guys that, you don't have to replenish that spot. You seem like you have 5 guys. Sayamala when he comes back. So you should have 5 offensive linemen that you feel pretty good with. You got Smith. Goddard, you hope to bring back. Really, it all comes down to, do you like the quarterback or not? And then you got to fix that defense. But you can't get into this thing where we still want to keep adding more toys on the offensive side of the ball. At some point, you have to start to address these other areas.
Oh, sure would be nice. I mean, I saw, I think the over-the-cap guy, I can't remember his name, he tweeted something about how the Eagles have invested the 7th most cash dollars this year into the defense, but if you divide it by position, it was 25th most cash money to linebackers and defensive backs, and 25th to defensive backs, 31st to linebackers. So that just tells you they're not spending a lot of money on defense. They're spending a lot of money on defensive linemen, right?
Yes.
So at some point they've got to put money and or draft resources, if not both, into the other areas of your defense, because as much as it all starts up front, as you can see, when you do the 3-step drop and short thing, you can neutralize even a great defensive line.
Right, and the interesting part about this is, what do they need? They need a linebacker, right? I mean, that's
at least one.
They need a linebacker. Well, you're not drafting one of those guys in the top 5, right? Typically.
No.
So, like, this
they're
whole
not.
thing of, people don't want them to win. Well, let's get the 3 picks. If you had 3 picks in the top 10, well, you have 3 picks in an area where you don't draft a linebacker.
Hey, you know what? I don't even want to. I get what you're getting at, but I don't even want to say like you have to use these top first. Just get a safety in the second round. Get a linebacker in the third round. Right? That's what you did a long, long time ago. You used to get some pretty good players. You got Jordan Hicks in the third round. He was good enough to help be on a Super Bowl winning team. Michael Kendricks had to come in that year. He was a second round pick. They signed Malcolm Jenkins. I don't care whether it's a draft pick or a free agent signing. Just give this team some linebackers and safeties that can play.
Yeah. Well, that'll be interesting. By the way, they did take Davion Taylor in the 3rd round. Where are we on him? I mean, is he a guy that just is uberly athletic, running around and making plays by accident? Is he a guy that, hey, giving some playing time, chip off the greenness that they may have got something here?
To me, he's a guy with great athleticism. And it's great that he's got great athleticism, but they're not able to harness it yet. He doesn't blitz. He's not out there covering in man, because they play mostly zone. And when they do play man, it's kind of man on the outside, zone on the inside. So, if they're facing a running quarterback who breaks the pocket, he might be able to chase him down and make a play. But I don't see him making impact plays. I see him being a replacement level player who has great athletic upside and great athletic tools. But they're not translating into playmaking type plays.
Well, there you go. 3rd round linebacker, kind of. We'll see. I mean, I do feel like at least he's on the field getting some time, and they're getting a chance to evaluate him, which has not happened in the past. You have a linebacker in the 3rd round actually playing, as opposed to getting drafted and just standing there with his helmet under his arm.
Yeah, no,
watching
it's
a street free agent playing ahead of him, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the reason they're getting picked apart, and that's what everybody's complaining about. But yes, he is getting experience, and you hope that next year he can take a bigger leap. By the way, he did not have. Remember, he was hurt all of training camp.
Yes,
right, and the first 3 weeks, much like Rodney McLeod. So, and Eric Wilson is not here. So, a lot of people are asking why Jonathan Gannon didn't do a better job of training these guys during camp. Well, 3 of the 4 guys who you would use as movable pieces were either hurt or not, or they're not in the plans anymore because they're not on the team.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it too.
All right. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast where they go a little deeper on a lot of these things. As Moshe mentioned, a lot different tasks this week against Denver. Good defense team. By the way, who's in, who's out yesterday? I have Denver in a playoff team.
All right.
Yeah.
So you would favor the Denver Broncos this weekend?
You got to. I mean, look, I tell you what, these playoffs are a mess. I mean, the AFC side has like 6 teams with 5 wins, all battling for 2 playoff spots. And the NFC side of things, who's going to be the 6 and 7 is going to be I feel like 8 wins is getting you a 7 seed.
I feel like the Giants series, because they have both games left to play, is going to be fascinating because I feel
Agreed.
like most Eagles fans think the Giants stink. And I think the Giants and Eagles are the Spider-Man meme, just like pointing at each other.
The Giants are having the same conversation. Hey, you're 3 and 6, but you got a shot at the playoffs because you play the Eagles twice.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? All right, Moshe, good to see you, man. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast, everybody. DeCecco's here tomorrow. Adam Kaplan on Friday. He's Geoff Mosher. Moshe, thanks, man.
You got it, Mike. Take care.
And Football at 4 is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. I'm Mike Gill. Good conversation with Moshe there on the Birds. When we come back, speaking of, it is my NFL Fine 5, Ugly 5. Who are the 5 best and 5 worst teams in the league after 10 weeks of NFL football? Find out next here on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.